What we have on display here is the what remains of the Ezra and Mary Alexander grave marker. One of the first part of the process was determining, how many extant pieces were on site. Luckily, they had been stored on site in a facility or in such a way in a facility where they weren't exposed to the elements: rain, snow, sleet, storms, any tornadic activity, anything at all that would contribute to the growth of lichen, other types of biological growth, biofilms. Inscription was originally carved pretty deep, so it had not worn that much, and being carved that deep, was helpful in reading the grave marker. That was very helpful when I was trying to put the pieces back together to see what was there and what was not there. So once I accomplished that, I took a lot of detailed photographs throughout the process. After talking to the site manager, it was explained to me that the goal was to have this thing kind of sitting or sort of on a cantilevered display case, which we eventually built. The way to get these pieces properly back together was to use a sort of an industry standard stone structural epoxy that will hold those pieces intact. And then in the areas where there were cracks, we would do what's called infill them with a lime mortar. And what we were able to do is, the company from which we purchased the lime mortar, I sent them some very small fragments that I was able to send to the company. And what they can do is color match. And so they sent me a sample that I mixed some of it, let it dry, and we compared it to the stone. And it's very difficult to match the stone perfectly. There's so many variables unless you're dealing with a piece of marble that, for whatever reason, has been able to, when you clean it, it's very, very white. And then you can find a lime infill that's either considered non-pigmented and it dries pretty white, or you can get something or a type of mortar that has a mixture of marble dust. I didn't just repair it on like a piece of plywood. We put it on like a frame where, when the work was done, we could just transport it in a way that wasn't going to compromise any of the bonding, the surfaces that we used the bonding agent on. So then, once we allowed ample time for the bonding agent to dry, we did what we call infill, which is basically mixing the lime mortar. It's a very fine lime mortar, and instead of using something that's coarse because it's just a little thicker, the coarser lime mortar is made for wider breaks, and the finer lime mortars for very thin breaks. So we infilled everything, making sure not to get too much of the infill outside of the cracks. Your broken surface could be across an inscription, and you can actually go back through and re-etch those. But I use a lot of caution. I don't want, it's nice if you can do it, but you need to be precise. You don't want to have some jacked up looking letters or numbers. So you can be as detailed as you want with these stones, and I think it's great to see it after 10 years and the mortar's held up really well. And I think, of course, it helps that it's inside versus being outside, because that lime mortar, if it's out in the elements, is going to break down at a much faster rate than if it's inside out of the elements. Again, who knows how long this could have originally been, but it could have been as long as some of the ones in the cemetery that are between 5.5 to 6 feet long, that could have contained as much what we call attributes in the epitaphs as the ones that are extant in the cemetery right now. So we did not try to do anything beyond this lower broken area, or the missing area. It just didn't make sense to try to create something where there was none. And even though it wasn't going to be outside, and one of the reasons with that bonding agent, you really don't want to cover the entire surface. Sometimes you have to, is because whether the stone is lying on its back or if it's standing, there's got to be transfer with water and water vapor. So you don't, like people ask me with grave markers, like I hear them ask or talk about using sealers on historic buildings. You're killing that building because there's no water vapor. It can't escape. People want a really quick fix, and they don't want to have to do it again. Like, they want to do it one time and that's it. And I have to tell them, whether it's cleaning or whether it's repair, I can't assure you that 15 years down the road more than likely it's going to need to be repointed. It's going to need more lime mortar. One of them is the same thing that each cemetery faces, is you can't, I mean, there's only so much you can do. You know, the stuff like you heard me make the comment that these things came out of the ground and their whole purpose in life is to get back into the ground. But surprise, you know, me saying that, some of these have lasted a very long time, and I think it has to do with the type of material that was used, the soapstone, you know, and you know, you don't have granite in the Polk cemetery, but challenges, you know, the stones are going to age no matter what you decide to do with them, whether if you want to leave them flush with the ground or just a little above ground, or if you want to stand them. You have there are external factors like, you know, it's great that because I don't think I've been around since the Greenway's been coming through here. The Greenway makes you susceptible to more people coming, which in turn could be vandalism. The stewards of the Polk Cemetery face the same kind of challenges that stewards of other cemeteries face. I would say the one good thing is that it is a state historic site. It's not like some cemeteries where we're currently working have worked and will probably work in the future, where it's a cemetery that was started by an organization, say in the 1890s, 19-teens, 1920s, and they had good intentions, but either there was a falling out, or people who were on the association died, and so at a certain point they stopped, you know, it was full and they stopped burying people there, and now there's no one, like it's just fallen into disrepair, interest wanes, people move away or people pass away, and then that Friends organization is not as strong as it was at one time. So their challenges are, I think, more intense than what you could face here, because you know, you do have the sort of the protection of being a state historic site. So that's a good thing. Right here, just this alone, almost that, it's not an effigy, but sort of that engraved effigy, that's pretty important.
Yeah, and that's a really cool death portrait too. I did like a recreation of the drawing, and I wet it down a little bit, and I think that she may even have a little bit of a veil, kind of.
Really?
A little bit, yeah. It's hard to see when it's dry like this, but I felt like when it was wet, a little bit was popping out right here. It almost looked like she had a veil on as well, which might have been indicative of the period too.
Well, and yeah, it looks like
really cool.
Yeah,
and the shape of the casket too. It's more like that mummy shape.
Yeah,
it's not, you know, straight rectangular.
Well, it's almost they've almost etched this to look like some sort of fabric shroud.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It's very intricate.
Yeah.
You don't see that a lot. So this must have cost a mint to get this done. Yeah. And I know Ezekiel Polk wrote this epitaph as well, and it rhymes. So for that reason, we call him the first rapper.